The night Cora Hensley got engaged. I was the one who drove her to the airport the next morning, so she could fly home and tell her parents in person. That was 3 years ago. The engagement didn't last. Neither did the one before it, or the situationship before that, or the guy she'd spent 4 months texting before deciding he just wasn't quite right. I'd heard that phrase so many times it had started to feel like a private joke I wasn't in on. I'm the one who always gets the call afterward. Not during, not before. After. After the dinners that went flat, after the trips that felt forced, after the Sunday mornings that started fine and ended with her sitting on her kitchen floor eating cereal and telling me over FaceTime that she couldn't explain it. He just wasn't quite right. I never asked what right meant. I was afraid I already knew. My name is Joel. I'm 31. I work in commercial real estate in Nashville. I own a Dutch oven. I've used exactly once, and I have been best friends with Cora Hensley since we were 22 years old and placed in the same miserable grad school orientation group. She had shown up 12 minutes late with a broken umbrella and a coffee that was clearly not her first of the day, sat down next to me, and said, without looking up, "Tell me this gets better or I'm going home." I told her it probably didn't, but that the free lunch was decent. She laughed. That was it. 9 years of that. Her cousin's wedding was in Asheville. Mid-October, the kind of weekend that looked like a screensaver. Blue Ridge Mountains going full autumn. A renovated barn venue with Edison bulbs strung everywhere. And about 140 people who all seemed to know each other in ways I could only partially follow. I'd been invited because Cora had asked me to come with her 8 months ago, back when she was still seeing the guy from Memphis who turned out to have complicated feelings about honesty. He was gone by June. My invitation stayed. I drove up with her on Friday afternoon, which meant 4 hours of her playlist. One gas station stop where she bought a bag of pork rinds she didn't end up eating, and a conversation about whether it was weird to feel sad at other people's weddings that drifted into something neither of us quite finished. "Do you think it's genetic?" she asked. "Somewhere around Cookville. Romanticizing everything, and then not being able to commit to any of it?" "I think you commit fine," I said. "I think you just commit to the wrong things." She looked out the window. "That's either really kind or really brutal. Pick whichever helps." She smiled and didn't say anything else for a while. I turned the music up 1 click and left it there. The venue was a converted farmstead about 20 minutes outside Asheville. And by the time we arrived and checked into the main house with the rest of the wedding party, there were already people I didn't know everywhere, holding drinks, talking across each other, wearing the kind of casual but expensive outfits that means someone thought about it for a while. Cora's cousin Bridget was moving through the crowd in a panic-efficient way that meant she was running the entire event from inside her own body, while also appearing to be relaxed. Her fiancé, a calm man named Drew who I'd met once before, was standing near the bar radiating the specific energy of someone who had accepted all outcomes. Cora got pulled immediately into the orbit of relatives I half recognized. I found a spot near the fire pit, got handed a drink by someone I didn't know, and settled in the way you do when you're a guest who's adjacent to the occasion. Close enough to help, loose enough to disappear if needed. That worked for about 20 minutes. "You're Joel," said a voice to my left. I turned. Standing next to me was a woman I'd never seen before, holding a glass of white wine and looking at me with the mild curiosity of someone who'd already heard a thing or two. "Guilty," I said. She put out her hand. "Simone? Bridget's cousin? Roommate from college. You're Cora's." I wasn't sure exactly what she meant by that, but I let it pass. Simone turned out to be easy company. She worked in environmental law in Atlanta, had opinions about the cheese plate, and asked questions that went somewhere. We talked for a while. Comfortable but lightweight, the way you talk to people at events where you don't know the stakes yet. Then, "Cora, Found me. She came around the side of the fire pit with 2 plates of food, and stopped when she saw me talking to Simone. Something in her face shifted. Not obviously, just a small adjustment. The way a room changes when someone opens a window. Stealing my person, she said to Simone. Friendly enough. Returning him, Simone said. He's well-mannered. Cora handed me one seat. Her fingers brushed mine for a second, longer than they needed to. She didn't look at me when it happened. She looked at the fire pit. We stayed close the rest of the evening, which was normal. That part was always normal. She'd loop back to me after every conversation, like I was where she reset. We'd done this at every event for years. Corporate parties. Her coworkers' birthday bar crawl. Her ex-boyfriend's surprisingly civil going-away dinner after he moved to Phoenix. She always found her way back to where I was standing, and I always made sure I wasn't standing too far from where she'd left me. The rehearsal dinner wound down around 11. People drifted back toward the main house, the guest cottages, the fire that someone had rebuilt down near the lower field. Cora's mom and aunt were doing that thing older relatives do at the end of a long evening. Standing in the doorway of the kitchen, debriefing everything that had happened while technically helping clean up. Cora had gotten pulled into helping Bridget with something venue-related. I was in the kitchen doing the thing I always ended up doing at family events I was adjacent to, making myself useful, loading things into the dishwasher, finding the container lids. Her mom, Diane, patted my arm when she walked past. She didn't say anything. Just the pat. I'd gotten that for years now, a small physical sentence I'd learned not to examine too closely. Bridget's grandmother, a small, sharp woman named Gloria who drank bourbon and remembered everything, came and stood next to me at the counter. "You've been friends since grad school?" she said. 9 years, I said. "And you drove up with her?" "Correct. And you're here all weekend?" "That's the plan." She picked up a lemon bar off the dessert tray and looked at me with the expression of someone about to say something they've already decided is fine to say. "She talks about you every time someone asks why she's still single, you know? Not in a way she'd admit to, but in a way everyone notices." I kept stacking plates. "I'm just here for moral support," I said, which was the sentence I always used, because it was technically true and technically incomplete. Said Gloria. And then she walked away with her lemon bar, which felt like a verdict. I was still processing that when Simone appeared in the doorway. She had her shoes in her hand. Heeled sandals, the kind that get abandoned around the 4-hour mark of any event. And the expression of someone who'd been thinking about something for a while. "She turned down somebody," Simone said. I put down the container I was holding. "What?" Simone came a few steps into the kitchen. "She wasn't drunk, exactly. Honest, more like. The way people get late at night when the event is winding down, and keeping things tidy feels like more trouble than it's worth. There was a guy, about 6 months ago, good guy apparently, serious about her. He was going to ask her to move in. Maybe more, eventually." She watched me carefully. She ended it before he got the chance. I didn't say anything. "I'm telling you because I've heard her talk about you," Simone said. "And because I think she's been doing this for a while and not saying so, and because you seem like someone who would rather know." She paused. "Was I wrong about that?" I thought about it. "No," I said. Simone nodded, picked up her wine glass, and said, "I'm going to go pretend I didn't say any of that," and left. I stood in the kitchen with the dishwasher humming, and the light still on over the stove, and something turning over in my chest that I didn't have clean words for. When Cora came back, I was still there. She walked in reading something on her phone. Bridget texting about tomorrow's timeline, probably, and she stopped when she saw me. The way I was standing, maybe, or the way the room felt. She looked around. "Where'd everyone go?" "Turned in," I said. "Already?" She put her phone face down on the counter. Then she looked at me again. "What happened?" Not a question. A read. Nothing, I said, and she tilted her head slightly, which meant she knew the difference between my nothing and an actual nothing. Joel. I looked at the counter. Then back at her. Simone said something. Simone. Her voice didn't change much, but her hand moved to the edge of the counter, like she wanted something to hold on to. What did she say? Still not a question. She already knew the category. She mentioned someone, I said. Someone from a few months ago, who you ended things with before he had a chance to. I stopped. I don't know the full story. Cora was quiet. The refrigerator made a small hum. Outside, somewhere down near the lower field, someone laughed at something. It wasn't dramatic, she said finally. Okay. He was a good person. He didn't do anything wrong. I believe you. She looked at me then, with an expression that was not quite an apology, and not quite a confession. I kept waiting to feel something that would make it obvious. Some clear signal that this was it, that I was sure. Her voice was careful. And I never got there. And I kept thinking about what I was comparing it to, and eventually that felt unfair to him. What were you comparing it to? I asked, even though I understood what she was saying. I wanted to hear it without filling it in myself. She looked at the window above the sink, where the kitchen light reflected both of us back faintly. Then she said quietly, "How things feel when I'm with you." The room did something strange then. Not silent. The refrigerator was still running. Someone had left a small Bluetooth speaker going near the back door with a low playlist that nobody was listening to. But inside my own head, the noise stopped clean. Cora, I said. Don't, she said, but not hard. More like she was bracing. Don't what? Don't do the thing where you make it smaller so I don't have to feel embarrassed. I thought about that. She wasn't wrong. That was something I did. Had done for years, at every moment that got too honest. Made a joke, turned into a sidestep. Kept things easy so nobody had to sit with the weight of what had almost been said. I wasn't going to, I said. She looked at me. I was going to say that I know what you mean, I said, because I've done the same thing. She went still. There was someone 2 years ago, I said. Before she moved to Denver. I liked her fine. She was smart and easy to be around, and we wanted a lot of the same things. Cora waited, and I kept thinking, why doesn't this feel like a given? Why do I have to keep convincing myself it's enough? I looked at the counter. I didn't have a name for it then. I was pretty committed to not having a name for it. Joel, she said softly. I know. She pressed her lips together. How long have you known? Longer than I'd like to admit. Why didn't you say something? For the same reason you didn't. She let out a breath. Not exasperated. Just tired in the way that means something has been held for a long time. Because it would change everything. Agree. Because it would change everything, I agreed. She moved around the island slightly, not closer exactly, just out of the static position she'd been holding. We had this thing, she said. This whole arrangement. That wasn't an arrangement, where I could call you at 11 on a Tuesday when something was wrong. And you'd pick up. And you could show up at my door with takeout on a bad week without either of us having to explain what the other person needed. And it all worked, and it was good. And I kept telling myself that was enough. It was enough, I said. I don't want to take that back. I'm not saying any of it was fake. I know, I mean it. Those 9 years are real. That's not a consolation prize. She looked at me steadily. I know, Joel. I know you mean that. She paused. But I've been standing on one side of something for a while, I said. And pretending the line wasn't there. Right in the comments. Were we stupid to wait this long? Did protecting what we had cost us something we should have reached for sooner? She moved her hand on the counter, and without really deciding to, I put mine next to it. Close enough that the edges touched. She looked down at them. This is very inconvenient timing. My cousin's rehearsal dinner, I said. Great place for a revelation. Bridget would be horrified. Bridget would be thrilled. That got a real laugh, the one she made. She was surprised by something. Short, a little unguarded. She covered it fast but not fast enough. I have to be up at 7, she said. I know. And there are 140 people here this weekend who will absolutely notice everything. I'm aware, and we've been friends for 9 years, and I've made a mess of approximately 4 relationships, and you've made a quieter mess of at least 2, and this is either the most obvious thing we've ever done or the most complicated. Probably both, I said. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, what happens if we do this and it doesn't work? That was the real question, the one that had been underneath everything. Not do you feel this way, which we'd apparently already answered. But what do we do with the answer? I don't know, I said. I've thought about it a lot and I don't have a clean answer. I just know that I've been sitting on the other side of that possibility for a long time, and I'm tired of using it as a reason not to move. Cora looked at me for a long moment. Say the thing, she said. What? The actual thing. Not the lead-up, the thing. I met her eyes. I want to be with you, not as the person you call from the floor of your kitchen when someone doesn't work out. Not as the guy your mom looks at, like he's already family while everyone pretends it's a joke. I want to take you to dinner on purpose, and tell you it's a date when I ask, and stop talking myself out of it the second it starts to feel real. She stayed quiet long enough that I heard the music from the speaker change songs. Then she said, I told him I wasn't ready. Her voice was soft. The guy from 6 months ago. I told him I wasn't in the right place. Were you? No. She looked at me. But not because I wasn't ready to be with someone. Because I'd already been, I don't know, oriented towards someone else, without admitting it, for a while. How long is a while? She made a face that meant she wasn't going to answer that directly. Long enough that I should have figured it out before letting it ruin 3.5 perfectly serviceable relationships. 3.5? The Memphis guy was only 2 months. I'm calling that a half. I almost smiled. That seems fair. She unfolded her arms and let them drop to her sides, and somehow that small surrender looked more honest than anything else she'd done all night. She was nervous. I'd known Cora for 9 years, and I could count on one hand the number of times I'd seen her actually nervous. I don't need you to have it figured out, I said. You say that. I mean it. I'm not asking you to hand me some finished version. I'm asking if we can stop pretending the door isn't there. She looked at the counter again, then up at me. I'm scared we'll ruin something that actually works. I know. You're not scared? I'm terrified, I said. I'm asking anyway. The back door opened and Cora's mom stepped in from outside. She was wearing a cardigan over her dress, and she took one look at the two of us, me at the sink, Cora at the island, the particular quality of stillness between us, and said, with the practiced neutral expression of someone who had been watching this for years, just getting water. Don't mind me. She crossed to the cabinet, got a glass, filled it at the tap. On her way back out, she stopped beside me and put her hand on my arm for one quick second, the same thing she always did, the same move, and then she said, the peonies in the centerpieces were your idea, Cora. They're beautiful. And she left. Cora stared at the doorway. She knew exactly what she walked into. She's known for a while, I said. That is so embarrassing. Little bit. She turned back to me and there was something different in her expression now. The guardedness was still there, but it had shifted, the way a locked door shifts when someone finally just tries the handle. Okay, she said. Okay, what? Okay, yes. Okay, I don't want to keep not doing this. She said it quickly, like she'd decided to just get it out before she thought it into the ground. I want to see what happens when we stop being so careful. I want to know if the actual thing is as good as the thing we've been dancing around. I'm aware this is a significant admission. It is, I said. I'm aware I'm making it in a farmhouse kitchen in Asheville the night before my cousin's wedding, while I'm still wearing heels. You took your heels off 40 minutes ago. She looked down. That's true. She looked back up. That doesn't help my case. You don't need a case, I said. You just said yes. She held still for a moment. Then she crossed the space between us, not rushing. Just moving like it was a thing she'd decided. And she stopped when we were close enough that I could see the small line of tiredness around her eyes, and the curl that had escaped from where she'd pinned her hair up. Hi, she said, like we'd just arrived somewhere. Hey, I said. I put my hand against her face, the side of her jaw, the way you do when you want someone to know you're paying attention. She leaned into it a little, just a little. And then I kissed her. Not anything complicated, just slow and certain, and with all 9 years of restraint, finally allowed to mean something, instead of having to mean nothing. When we stepped back, she exhaled. We're going to be unbearable tomorrow, she said. Bridget will notice everything. Bridget notices if you change your part. She's going to have opinions. She can have them, I said. Cora smiled, and it was the real one, the full one, the one she made when she wasn't managing anything. You know Simone's going to think she fixed this. She kind of did. She is going to be insufferable about it, probably for years. I'm going to blame you. I'll allow it, I said. We cleaned up the rest of the kitchen without talking too much. She dried while I stacked. She found the foil for the leftover desserts. I tracked down a missing serving spoon under a folded napkin. We'd done versions of this 100 times. In her apartment, in mine, in her mom's house at Thanksgiving, at her work friends' birthday parties. It felt the same. It also felt completely different. Both things were true at once, and neither one canceled out the other. When the kitchen was done, we stood in the quiet for a moment. The speaker near the back door had finally gone silent. Through the window, the lights on the lower field were mostly out. I'll walk you to your cottage, I said. We're both in the main house, she said. Different floors, I said. Still counts. She smiled and picked up her sandals from where she'd left them on the floor. We walked out into the hallway together, past the great room where the last embers of the fireplace were going gray, through the front door and onto the porch. The night was cool and clear and smelled like leaves, and the wood smoke still coming off the fire pit. The mountains were black shapes against a sky full of stars. Cora stood at the top of the porch steps for a second, looking out. I've been doing that thing, she said quietly, where you keep the door unlocked but tell yourself you haven't. I know, I said. I've been standing outside it. She turned and looked at me with an expression I couldn't fully name but didn't need to. Not anymore, she said. Not anymore, I said. The wedding the next day was everything Bridget had planned it to be, which is to say exactly right. The ceremony was in the field with the mountains behind it, and Cora stood up with the other bridesmaids in a dusty blue dress and cried a little when Bridget walked in, which she would absolutely deny later. I sat in the 5th row and watched her instead of the bride. And when she glanced over from the front and found me looking, she pressed her lips together and looked at the altar. But she was smiling. Simone sat 2 seats down from me. At one point during the reception she leaned over, completely unprompted, and said, I'm not going to say I told you so. Thank you, I said. But I noticed you two came down to breakfast together this morning. Noted, and that she fixed your collar. You're very observant. Environmental law, she said pleasantly, and went back to her champagne. It's been 7 months since that weekend. Cora lives 12 minutes from my apartment, which she always has. That hasn't changed. What changed is that I don't talk myself out of the drive anymore. We went on a real date the week after Asheville, I asked. Called it a date when I asked, on purpose, without hedging. We went to a restaurant in East Nashville that we'd walked past together about 15 times over the years, and always said we'd try. It was good. More than good. Her mom called me the following Sunday. Not Cora, me, to ask how it went. I told her it went well. She said, I know. Like she'd been waiting 9 years to say exactly that. It still feels like the same thing. Tuesday phone calls, the takeout rotation. Knowing what she needs before she says it. Only now I don't have to pretend it doesn't matter. I don't have to drive home afterward and talk myself out of what the evening meant. It feels like we finally stopped calling it something smaller than it was.